Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies both new and old with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right. And to avoid any lazy negativity, we're making this a drinking game. Any negative criticism about a film, or in this case a franchise, is absolutely allowed, but you will be called out for it, and you will have to take a drink every time. And that does go for our friends at home listening. Crack open a beer, sit down, have some fun with us.
So, pour yourself a glass or grab that can, join us and give it up for the films we love and perhaps the films that need some love. And guys, I promise not to pull a whammy this week. I'm not going to pull a whammy on you. I have a decision. I agonized over for about 5 hours, but I have a decision.
Jesus. Yeah, this is going to be a tough one.
Dave is calling back to the end of our last episode, in which, a little bit of a spoiler alert, both of our film franchises advanced. So we are doing what we're calling the Corona franchise face-off, where we've chosen our 16 favorite trilogies or franchises to binge watch during the age of coronavirus while we were all separated. And our 4-seed Toy Story went up against John Wick, and there was a split vote, 1-1. I voted in favor of John Wick. John voted in favor for Toy Story. And Dave has this very interesting metric, and he came out with a deadlocked tie. So we advanced both films, and we are going to open up our bracket to films that we snubbed. Film franchises that we snubbed. That includes the Dark Knight trilogy got a snub, the Die Hard trilogy, or like a series, got a snub.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, so there's a lot of other things.
I thought Die Hard was
so please stop the fucking
versus
hate
Harry
mail.
Potter.
Oh my god, damn it, Die Hard's next week. Oh god, I got Die Hard out of the way. Sorry, I meant to say the Bourne franchise. The Bourne is not.
Yeah.
The Dollars trilogy for all of you classic movie lovers. Anyway, so right now, where we're at, we have our 1-seed, The Lord of the Rings, 2-seed, Godfather, 3-seed, Star Wars, all advanced, and then our 4-seed and our 13-seed, John Wick, and Toy Story both advanced. So we have five franchises going. Anyway, so excited to move on this week. Only one can advance. But before we get into it, John, a couple shout-outs.
As usual, I want to throw it out to our beer sponsor, Carlos Barroso. Give him a follow at C Barroso Bar 2019. That's CBARROZOBAR 2019. And as always, the music you hear throughout this episode, beginning, middle, and end, is provided by the artist Dasein. That is Dasein, Dasein. Follow him on SoundCloud.com/Dasein-artist. All right, let's fucking do this. I've been very nervous all day. Maybe a little bit yesterday too, leading up to this week. I knew this was going to be a weird one. We keep picking like really fun franchises, really fun things. For some reason, this week really got me. We've already said it, right? We know what we're doing this week.
There's an element of danger involved.
We have not introduced the films this week.
Okay, so I'm nervous and you don't know why. Dave, why don't you tell us what films we're doing so I can release a little bit?
We've put the entire Star Trek franchise movies up against the Back to the Future franchise.
Oh God!
Because we're sadistic bastards.
Yeah.
Wait, but here's the thing. Here's how this works. You know what? Especially in the age of whenever a movie makes money, you obviously try to make as many as possible for these franchises. Like, why wouldn't Disney remake Aladdin? It's going to make $1 billion. Why wouldn't it remake Mulan? It's going to make $1 billion. It's really hard to tell somebody to not do something that's going to make $1 billion. And so if Star Trek wants to make 13 movies, that's fine. But they better all be good fucking movies.
None of which made $1 billion.
None of which made $1 billion. Because Back to the Future stopped at 3. I'm sure Michael J. Fox would have just gone insane. He would have moved and come up with a completely different accent and a completely different disguise that looks and sounds exactly like him.
Jesus.
If they wanted to make a more...
Oh, yeah. Drink for that shit, motherfucker. Oh, my God.
So anyway, Star Trek
Sorry for the pause.
MCU.
There was a... Did you just say what I think he said?
Did he just fucking make a fucking... Parkinson's? Come on.
No, I did not make a... Wait.
No, he did not.
I'm going to clip this mic. I did not make a Parkinson's joke. I made a reference to all of his characters in the Back to the Future movies, one of which sort of had an Irish accent. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
So much fun.
So, yeah. God damn it. Another drink for me. If you don't know, listening at home, that buzzer means that we have to drink, which means you do as well. We are going to start with our 5-seed, which is the Back to the Future trilogy. So we will put the 13 Star Trek films off to the side, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. check the timestamps below if you would like to jump. Who would like to get us started with Back to the Future?
I'll throw it up.
Okay.
I mean, how do you not enjoy these movies? Like, they're just growing up. I mean, this was like the trilogy. You know, these huge franchises didn't really like explode until more recently. We're not there yet, but Star Trek was one of the only ones that did like lots and lots and lots of films until Marvel started cranking them out, until Lucas finally started rebooting the Star Wars, until Fast and Furious started joining the group and running away with it. So it was mostly, you know, when we were growing up, you had trilogies. You had Indiana Jones, which did not make our list. What's up, right? And
yeah,
and Back to the Future was always my favorite one. It's I don't know. I don't even know where to begin. This thing does something to most people, and I think it's because it uses so much wonderful nostalgia in the first one to create and develop the characters. I was thinking about this, and I was talking about this with my friend, like the difference between these two, you know, very different kinds of franchises. Back to the Future makes you really care about Marty McFly and Doc and Marty's whole family. And I think the vehicle, especially with the first one, of using it, the nostalgia and the period of going back and getting to hang out with his and like date his mom, as fucking weird as that shit is. I feel like there was just no chance, but by the end of it, by the time you get to 2, can be a little sticky for some people. I still really like that one. 3 is a lot of fun. I like that it kind of goes back and mostly features Doc. I feel like 2 is mostly about Marty. 1 is mostly about Marty. I'm glad that 3 balances out with a lot about Doc and his perspective. By the time you finish these 3 movies, you love going on the journey back to the future or back from the past. It doesn't really matter which direction they're going in because you love them so much. You just want to hang out with them and listen to Doc's antics and see what Marty's going to be freaking out about and waiting for somebody to call him chicken. You're just so invested in these characters. So I don't know. That really struck me the most this time when I was giving them a rewatch, that I was worried kind of coming into it that because it leaned so heavily on nostalgia and stuff that I was going to feel like it was a little divicey, that it was using that to its credit too much. But as long as it created more reasons to care about the characters, I found myself really, really, really loving it. By the time you get to the end of the 3rd one, you're really sad that there isn't a 4th or a 5th or a 6th or a 7th one, which there never will be as long as Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale are alive, because those 2 dudes still own the rights. So, and they have said that they are never going to release it as long as they're alive. They will never release the rights. So,
and I can tell you, I even from a reboot, I could never see anyone doing this until recently. Did you see the deepfake video that was going around recently?
No.
Somebody got Back to the Future, the hallway scene with Marty and Doc, and deepfaked Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. into it. And I must admit, I hit play on that, and my reaction was like,
yeah,
that could work.
That could work.
But still, no.
Yeah.
Buzz myself.
Yeah, still no, right? I don't think anybody wants that to happen. What do you guys think? How do you feel about it?
Dave?
No, you don't want that to happen. Like they stopped at 3 and respect. It was a great trilogy. I remember seeing these all in the cinema when I was younger. My favorite was number 2.
Yeah, me too, dude.
Because I was obsessed with the future as a kid. Also, just the sheer amount of in-jokes that they managed to throw in, like recurring jokes over many different time periods. Yeah. The character duplications, like Michael J. Fox as a woman. There's like so much in these films, and there's so much to go back and look for. Like, you don't notice that like Doc Brown rode behind himself in the first one, and stuff like that. Like they've already set up the fact that they messed with the time period in the second movie, in the first movie.
Yeah.
So somebody sat down and drew all this stuff out, and it just did it amazingly. And I think that's one of the other things I like, is when films are clever like that.
Yeah. This script, let's throw it out to them for saying that. This script was rejected for the first one 44 times before it was finally greenlit.
And they changed actors.
And they changed actors after they was already greenlit.
Yeah.
They were shooting.
They were halfway through shooting, and Marty McFly was originally Eric Stoltz, and it wasn't working, and they had a very awkward discussion and went, "Nope, we're gonna get Michael J. Fox in after all."
Yeah. And didn't they he got let go after dailies, right? Where they hadn't even mixed audio in. So it's literally just like watching him without audio, I think, is where they're like, wait a second.
They were like, I think 15 days into the shoot by this point.
And Michael J. Fox, this is a famous story too, because he was still shooting Family Ties. Growing Pains. Family Ties, great. Yeah. Thank you, guys. He was still shooting Family Ties, and so they had to work around each other's schedule. Like, it was like a scheduling nightmare to get him.
That's why most of Back to the Future happens at night. Yeah. Because he was on Family Ties during the day, and then he'd go to the set for Back to the Future at night and film all night.
Apparently there are a couple. There is one shot where you still see Stoltz. Apparently it's the scene in the diner in the first one, I think, where the first time he punches Biff, and it's Stoltz's hand and Biff's close-up getting punched in the face, and they left that one in. And I think there's an over the shoulder or something that is similar.
What are the SAG rules for that? Does he still get a credit?
Oh yeah, I mean, come on, somebody paid him for that hand model.
But yeah, I mean, like, they're even poking fun of themselves. I mean, Steven Spielberg was involved in these a lot. Mm-hmm. And there's a joke a bit in there about Jaws in part 2 where like the CG shark comes at him and he's screaming his head off, and then the shark disappears and he's like, yeah, the shark still looks fake. Like, they're poking fun at themselves, they're poking fun at everyone else. It's a ridiculous time travel movie. Oh.
The tagline for Jaws is, this time it's really, really personal, I think, is what it was, like Jaws 9 or 19
18,
or something.
I think it was 18 or something, yeah. But like, this thing has almost as many Easter eggs in Toy Story. Like, just follow the progression of like Mayor Goldie Williams through it.
Okay. I don't know how to start off. So first things first. The first film, the first Back to the Future film. There's really not much we can say about it because it is a timeless classic. The entire opening one-shot oneer that has no special effects. They basically designed this as if it was the #1 science project in the country, was how you can open a can of dog food. Honestly, it's like a quarantine challenge. Can you pull off the opening oneer that ends with Michael J. Fox's feet? And then he has the skateboard and the Nikes, and then it like pans up to him. Like, if you could figure that out during quarantine, kudos to you. The internet will love you. It was a lot of practical stuff, and it's perfect. So I don't have much to say about that. As far as rewatching all 3, which I did, we'll talk later about Star Trek and 13 films, but I did rewatch all 3 of these, and I mean, they're so good that I watched one with Chloe, and immediately we were like, we want to start 2 right away. It is an anomaly. I don't understand how these 3 movies didn't turn into the corniest, cheesiest pieces of garbage, because every single movie, there are like 20 lines that are repeated through these movies. They have scenes that you see 3 different times throughout the films. They use footage from the first one and the second and 3 from different angles. So they're obviously doing reshoots, and so like you're wrapping your head around it. Somewhere in 2, the actual logistics of whether or not this could work out, you can tell they sort of like yada yada over, because like as soon as Doc Brown reads, for instance, as soon as Doc Brown reads in the news that he's going to die, that's technically Doc after that point, so he immediately should know to prevent his future death. You know what I mean? So like they start to get at it. No. Apparently Carl Sagan really liked the first one, but they start to get as far as like the actual time, yada yada yada. It doesn't matter. My point is, I don't know why these are so fucking fun to watch. And as to John's point, it has to just be Marty and Doc. And you kind of want to give credit to everybody, but Crispin Glover, who plays the father, who plays George McFly, there's a contract dispute. There's no shade. I'm not blaming him in any way, shape, or form. But for whatever reason, he got a lowball offer for 2. He didn't take it. And then he ended up having to sue them because they used footage from the first movie, and apparently he didn't give them permission. They had to create a SAG clause about whether or not you can use a person's likeness from the first movie in the next movie if they turn it down. Our conversations about Independence Day with Will Smith turning that down and other situations. So like the third movie,
a big portrait of Crispin Glover and hang it up in the...
Oh my God, I know. I feel bad for Biff, because even though after the second movie they probably should have cut their losses right there with him. I mean, how much he can't have a voice anymore after filming that second movie. He was just screaming all of his lines. Apparently, old means you scream as if you've smoked a cigar for the past 5 years. Yeah. Anyway, long story short, it's really just Marty and the Doc going, yeah, Marty's mom's there, but it's just Marty and Doc in the third movie, and that's actually my second favorite. After the first one, number 2 just gets a little too muddled. The plot gets a little crazy, and then the last 30 minutes of I know. And the last 30 minutes though, there's actually nothing to look forward to because it's going to work out. So it's basically like if you leave for a second, what did I miss? No, he's still just doing the same thing. Like anyway.
Is it my number 2 or number 3? The last 30 minutes.
Sorry, I'm getting jumbly here. Number 2, the last 30 minutes of number 2. It's just this sequence to get the comic book pretty much for Biff and not mess up the past.
Number 3 is the same way.
Which again,
number 3, they're all have a finale, like a 20-30 minute sequence at the end.
Number 3 is different because you don't know whose name is going to be on the tombstone, and even though that's a very simple thing, it could be one of 3 people. So there is the outcome does matter. Whereas with Marty, it's basically like, don't fuck this up. The last 30 minutes of the movie is, hey Marty, don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
And it's just not as thrilling for me. But seeing ahead. The best part about 3 is number 2 is basically all about what is the future going to be like. This is basically like, let's pretend the future is like this. Instead of skateboards, it's hoverboards. Instead of glasses, you wear these special eye things that you have like lenses that tell you what's going on elsewhere. You can read the news on it. Basically what we have as a cell phone, they wear it on their eyes. And then the third movie's in the Deep West where there's no effects. So it's just really, again, I don't know why these movies are so entertaining, but they really, really fucking are. And they're great to watch in a row. They really are good to watch 1 through 3.
I mean, I think you get to... I know these weren't his first. Let me double check that right now. But Robert Zemeckis is probably my favorite like commercial film director, especially from that period. This was when he really exploded, right? This is before Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Let me just double check that really fast there. Yeah. Back to the Future was 1985, right?
5.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, so Who Framed Roger Rabbit was right after that in 88. So Romancing the Stone is awesome. People knew him from that before, so that was good. But then he really exploded with this. And I mean, he's just been dominating since then. I remember I used to be confused.
Side note, Romancing the Stone just hit streaming too. That's another good watch.
It's a really good watch. I really like that movie. Yeah, I like him the most. He's definitely my favorite big commercial filmmaker. And it is not easy to do that job. I don't even like Spielberg is the other monster one. I like Zemeckis more consistently than I like Spielberg. But I think after those two established what that kind of thing looks like, I think you consistently see people trying to imitate both of them over and over and over again. We see people trying to make huge, successful movies. And it comes down to craft and storytelling. I think exactly what you're talking about. The reason this doesn't devolve into some cheesy thing where it's just the device. We were all kind of talking with each other, podcast listeners, about how we're all a little frustrated with Westworld right now because you don't give a shit about anybody anymore, and you feel like you're just watching these devices and these storytelling things play on themselves, and you don't care about the people. Fuck it. Yeah, I'm frustrated.
Yeah, it's a buzzer, not Chewbacca.
Yeah, I feel like he's too good at filmmaking to let that happen. He knows that it doesn't matter if he has that amazing oneer that opens each of the movies if you don't give a shit about who that oneer eventually lands on.
Right.
Right.
I mean, like you look at the fact he was given $19 million to make Back to the Future.
Wow.
That was the budget of that film.
Wow.
And he's pulled out something that has better rewatchability than almost anything that comes out today.
Yeah, the most famous car in movie history.
And they use the effects where they're supposed to use the effects. ILM definitely was on board with this, and that mattered. He put the money where it needed to be used, and you're right. He crafted a film technically so that wherever money needed to be spent on special effects, it was spent. Otherwise, it was spent on very classic storytelling techniques.
Yeah,
and
on
the
modern day
was
equivalent of
something.
350.
Yeah, 350. What's that? Boy, why do you let that lock rest? That's South Park. Jeff.
I almost spat my beer.
Yeah, you saw it, right? I saw that lock rest. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it works because honestly, he is that good. And not to harken back to the things we were talking about with Star Wars, but I think one reason those movies seems to feel like, where is the unifying thing well, there's not one person at the helm that does that job the best every single time. And of course, that's not totally fair because there's only 3 of these. But I have just enjoyed everything he's made since these and before, and he just never seems to miss. And it's so fun to go back and watch these movies. And you're right, especially especially the first one, you get to see him working with smaller budgets, and you just realize it doesn't matter if he had 20 or $200 million. He knows how to make a movie based on the story and the script that is in his hand to the best of his ability for a very wide audience. Everybody can enjoy this kind of movie. And it's almost enigmatic
keep in mind that every single ending to these movies is perfect.
Yeah.
Like, the story's over and you get this little coda where Doc turns up and goes, it's your kids. Something's got to do down to pay your kids, which leads into a whole second movie. They didn't have that written at that point. They, like, that one line generated that entire film. I mean, the second and third ones. First movie. Yeah. The second and third ones were shot at the same time. So yeah, the ending of the first one, second one, led straight into the third one. But again, it's the same deal. Like, you've just seen this thing explode in midair, and all of a sudden, someone comes out of nowhere and delivers a letter, and it's like at the ending is the perfect thing to feed you to bring you straight onto the next story.
Yeah, eat your heart out, 24. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. I know. And back to John Wick, what that means is that the beginning of Back to the Future 1 to the end of Back to the Future 3 is 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
Something like that. Yeah, it's about
the end
4 weeks?
The end of Back to the Future 1 to 3.
Oh, so it's 2 weeks then, because he has a week basically in that future. It's like 2 days.
Yeah. Well, that's going to get into us having a conversation of the time actually, Matt, because there's literally no time passes from the end of 1 to 3.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh, no, from 1 to 2, and then 2 to 3 there is. Oh, I see what you're saying.
1 to 3, there's no time that passes. All right, how many days is he in? Right. Is he in number 2? No, he's in 5 days in number 3.
Exactly.
5 days in number 3.
I think it's 5 days in each.
I think it's 5 in each, but it's actually the same. All right. We're having fun.
Yeah.
15, baby.
Yeah.
Man, I like it. How about the acting? Tom Wilson as Biff just blows my mind, dude. How much fun did that guy get to have in all those movies?
Reportedly the nicest guy on set,
Thomas
too.
Wilson? That's his name, right?
Thomas F. Wilson.
Thomas F. Wilson.
I would say, I mean, in the first one especially.
Number 3, dude. He is so good as Tannen in number 3.
The whole way through, yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually probably my favorite Biff. Is
when he's screaming, when he's doing the, I'm going to give you the count of 10 to get out of here. And he's counting it, and he gets to 6. And he looks over at his friends and just hold on. 7! Right. I mean, God, you're right. All the actors, you get to seeing them pop up again. When the sheriff who plays the principal in the first one is like telling his little kid at the time about discipline. It's like he's quoting himself from number 1. I mean, how does that not turn into something that's just like a little device and cheesy? How does that work? Is it what is it?
Exactly.
I mean, it falls on the same thing.
What do you think?
It falls on the same thing where you're in on the joke. It's like you're taking this journey with him, so they're making this reference that this guy's already made, and you're like, oh, yeah, I was paying attention. I saw that before. I'm in on this joke. So you're included. So it includes you in the joke as it goes through. There's things like Twin Pines Mall. If you want to get the really subtle ones, when he jumps in the car after the guy shoots at the car and he drives off and he runs down one of the pines and the guy screams, "My pine!" And when they go back, the name of the mall's changed to Lone Pine Mall.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like there's all these little jokes.
Speaking of, you're totally right, and I think the performances are probably one of the big reasons why it never feels cheesy. You always feel like you're there with them. You're in on the joke. I totally agree with that. And it never feels like anyone could have said that. It was just the line. They were just trying to get the joke across. Like it came through with the characters. Real quick little anecdote about the Twin Pines Mall. Bob Gale, he was the co-writer with Zemeckis, claims that on October 26, 1985, a group of people showed up at the mall used to film the Twin Pines Mall to see if Marty McFly would arrive in his DeLorean.
Companies spent millions of dollars trying to develop a hoverboard by 2015.
I know
They almost succeeded, but it needed a magnetic
Atari's
floor,
name was on
yeah.
Atari's name was on it. Atari, right? Atari was on the hoverboard, and so people would call them up, or maybe it was Mattel. Shit. And then so people would call up the company and be like, "Are these available yet? Like, we'll pay whatever. Like, we'll get the hoverboards." And they're like, "No."
I mean, it wasn't that long ago, you guys.
Also, why would you skate them like a skateboard? Why would you do that? Why would we invent that? Why would we make you go on one leg on a hoverboard?
I remember 2015. I remember how disappointed everybody was when we were all like, "Damn it. This is not even close to number 2.
Yeah.
we just aren't here, dude."
All we got was the size adjusting sneakers.
Yeah, and we still don't even have the auto lacing sneakers.
Yeah.
Does that take anything away from y'all? Away from it for you guys? That I know it's not sincere. It's not 2001: A Space Odyssey, but a lot of the really good earlier sci-fi Star Trek, which we'll get there, it's 2001. There are a lot of things that they fucking nailed with their predictions on technology. And they really, I don't know, chicken or the egg, if people in technology actually took their cue from, engineering wise and made stuff based on those shows. But some of that shit really did stick, and it was a very good prediction. Almost nothing sticks in these movies. Does that take anything away from it for you guys?
Not at all.
It does make it a little bit more. 2 is not my favorite. Let's put it that way.
Isn't there a wall-sized television inside their house? Isn't there like a tire wall, like Barney from How I Met Your Mother? I guess that's okay. The giant televisions. That wasn't.
Yeah, he gets fired over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forgot. That's good.
And by fax and everything else in the house.
Oh man.
Yeah. So anyway, we didn't get too specific about each movie. We're just kind of talking about them generally, but I feel like that's the thing about these movies. We watch what we're talking about with the trilogies and franchise face-off, where it's like we're talking about these as the full franchise. The first one could have been a classic on its own, would have been one of the most rewatchable movies of all time, which it is. I watched it in the park in New York City. They do like the free park series, and I mean, there were thousands of people who showed up who were screaming when curtain, people were getting entrance applauses, and it was really cool. All the lines like "Where we're going, we don't need roads," just like raucous applause. But watching them in sequence really did have an added sentimental value, especially by the time they get to third. And I was like, oh, great, Doc has a love interest. And then by the end of the movie where you're like, wait, is Doc going to stay or go? That actually really mattered to me. Whereas at the end of the second one, I didn't really have a dog in the fight other than don't fuck this up. It was like, what is going to happen to Doc? What is he going to choose? Either way works for me. And I was just like really hanging on for the ride to see what he would choose.
Also, the other reason this really, really works is because you've got a completely outlandish character paired with almost the perfect straight man. So no matter how ridiculous Doc gets, as long as Marty's like, what? And then in the third, they kind of flip it.
Yeah.
So Marty gets a little more outrageous. Totally like he's running around claiming to be Clint Eastwood, who they asked permission to use his name, by the way.
They had to. This is the best part about having Spielberg on board. I'm sure he also called
Clint
Scorsese and went,
yeah.
I'm sure he called Scorsese and said, "Hey, we want to do a you talking to me moment in the mirror. Is that okay?"
Yeah,
like,
I mean, they had to. I also love the. There are
apparently
several.
Clint Eastwood was quite tickled.
Oh sure,
there are
especially when they said like Clint Eastwood. People for centuries are going to say Clint Eastwood is the biggest coward to ever walk this art.
Yeah, there are several really good homages throughout these movies, but number 3 has so many. When Marty walks into the town of Hilldale, they do the Once Upon a Time in a West establishing shot.
Mm-hmm.
It's the mirroring shot. It's the exact same thing. Obviously, all the Clint references. One of my favorite lines. There's so many.
They don't have ZZ Top play their town dance, though, do they?
ZZ Top. I would still whistle that song. I've whistled that song my entire life, dude.
Yeah.
But like you know they were the band, right? In the dance scene, yeah, they were the band. Yeah.
That guy in the saloon talks like this.
Run
for fun. What the hell kind of fun is that? I mean, God, this shit is
so funny.
And I don't know. It was
all right, yeah.
All right, we haven't talked about this yet. How about Alan Silvestri's theme? I mean, fucking iconic, dude. Yeah, it's a theme. It's not the whole score. He has 2 themes that he uses in this movie.
Didn't they use a brief sample of the theme in A Million Ways to Die in the West as well?
Did they really?
The Seth MacFarlane film, and there's a very brief scene where something's going on in the barn, and he opens the door to the barn, and Doc Brown's in there covering up like the time machine. He's like, "What are you doing? Nothing."
I remember that.
Yeah.
That was one of the worst.
I'm pretty sure
we saw that in theaters.
Life,
John, I watched it with you. I don't know how we made it to the end of that movie.
Yeah, I repressed that, Dave. Thanks for bringing that up. Thanks for bringing back the trauma
Dave.
of that movie.
My dad in Australia loved that movie.
God, that was bad. This movie was good. Yeah, Alan Silvestri. He wrote a hell of a couple themes for these things.
Let's do favorite movie. Like, give me a ranking and favorite line.
I'm 1, 2, 3 for sure.
Interesting. I'm 1, 3, 2.
I'm 2, 1, 3.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
I didn't like Mary Steenburgen.
She bothered you?
Oh, I thought she was nice.
Yeah, I thought she was nice. She looks the same.
I mean,
by the way.
she was
That
great
woman
when
is
she
not
lost.
aged at all.
She looks exactly
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I love her in Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. She's fantastic, but I just thought she was a little miscast in part 3.
Yeah.
Also, why is Doc Brown creating kids at the end of these movies? Why does he have kids? He's 80 years old by the end.
Honestly,
of
I
these
thought that
films.
was very fucking weird. Like, how much older is he supposed to be than her? I know he always had white hair or silver hair or
Right.
whatever, but like, I kept thinking of
Yeah,
by
he
the
was,
way, it kept
he was
making
30,
me think of.
Yeah, he was like 30 in the 50s.
Do you guys remember the villain in the second Ghostbusters movie that comes out of the painting and he has like long
Yes,
silver hair?
Vigo.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
Vigo. I kept thinking of that guy. It's like, is that Doc Brown? Favorite line, dude. You're making me reach.
Yeah, there's so many.
Just to wrap it up as well, like the Doc Brown character wasn't originally like that. That entire performance was based on what he auditioned like.
Oh,
they
sure.
hadn't
Wait, do
written
you
the
mean it
character
wasn't,
in
it
that
wasn't
manner.
written that way? Yeah.
No, and he came in and did an audition that was completely zany, and they were like, "Oh, wait a minute." And that's, to me, that's one of the most beautiful things when you've written something and you hold an audition and someone walks in and just owns the fucking character and does something you're like, I never actually thought of that, but that's fucking brilliant.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's what you're waiting for.
And I mean,
right?
that person's in your film. Yeah.
What do you think it would have been like? God, would they have tried to make it like totally sincere? Like a sincere scientist?
I think it was just more in like less wacky intense.
Yeah. Because that first scene in the first one, that mall parking lot scene is very dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see it having gone another way. Well, thank God. Can you imagine anyone else playing that part?
No, I couldn't, except maybe Robert Downey Jr. now.
No.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
He's got to do something after Doolittle.
I was going to say, give him a chance after Doolittle, motherfucker. Nobody saw that.
Oh, man.
Jeff, what are your favorite lines?
Sort of
I think you have some lines
like,
up your shirt sleeve right now. Let me
hey, Russo's, resurrect Iron Man, please.
The line reading of the way he says, "You made a time machine out of a DeLorean," like the way he says the line reading is really iconic. My favorite is when he sees his Uncle Joey that's in prison in real time, and he sees him as a baby, and he's in a crib, and he goes, "Hey, better get used to these bars, huh?"
That's one of my favorites.
So stupid. Why is he so rude to this little baby? It's so funny.
The Chuck Berry moment, of course, is classic.
Right. It is too bad that they wrote The Power of Love and Back in Time, I think. Definitely The Power of Love were basically written for this movie. And then the two most famous songs from the movie are Earth Angel and Johnny Be Good.
Yeah. That's sentiment, dude. Anyway. It's hard to get around it.
All right, just to quickly wrap it up. So, favorite line?
Yeah. You made a time machine out of a DeLorean.
I think mine's gonna be that run for fun line. I know that's fucking terrible. That thing always makes me laugh. I don't know.
I'm going with the classic. It's like roads where we're going. We don't need roads.
Yeah, sure. That's not fair. Yeah. Good. That's a classic. That's great. So that's Back to the Future. We had too much fun talking about that. Obviously, you've already seen them millions of fucking times. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about all Star Trek movies.
13. And we're back!
Oh
we're back.
We're back, baby.
Did I just clip the mic on our return?
Just like,
I think I saw a little bit of brain come out of John's nose.
My right ear is just ruined now. Let me change earplugs.
Well, I didn't say this ahead of time, but just to remind everybody, we are recording remotely. I escaped the city a long time ago. I did not bring my microphone because I didn't realize that New York was going to become the worldwide epicenter for the coronavirus. So my audio is going to be a little subpar compared to theirs. Also, it does mean that we can mess with each other because we're not in the same room. So my deepest apologies, friends.
Not as easily, anyway. We're still messing with each other.
That's right.
All right.
So we Back to the Future, great trilogy. Now we are going to put up 13 cinematic experiences up against the nostalgia flicks of Back to the Future. We are talking about Star Trek.
Yeah, we were like, it's Orthodox Easter. Let's do a David and Goliath thing. You know, I don't know.
Orthodoxy. I just started watching Unorthodox on Netflix, by the way. Very interesting. Anyway, I had no time to watch that this week while watching 16 films.
Star Trek.
Yes. Who wants to start? So Dave knows the most about Star Trek.
Did not start with me. No one will get a word in.
Oh my gosh. So Dave's also drinking really high alcohol beers. So we're going to try to get him to buzz himself as much as possible during the segments.
All right, first,
John, let's start with you.
Yeah, first let me just for everyone so we'll be on the same page, I am just going to reel off very quickly all 13 films so everyone knows what we're talking about, because anyone who knows the Star Trek universe, or particularly for those of you who don't know, the movie started after the original series ended. So there are some movies with the original cast. There are some with some of the original cast and the new Next Generation cast. And then there's the recent ones, the trilogy from recently, which is a whole different thing.
Alternate universe.
Yeah. So just very quickly, here we go. Star Trek, the original motion picture. Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. 3, The Search for Spock. 4, The Voyage Home. 5, The Final Frontier. 6, The Undiscovered Country. 7, Generations. 8, First Contact. 9, Insurrection. 10, Nemesis. And then you have these new ones. Star Trek from 2009, Star Trek Into Darkness 13, Star Trek Beyond 2016. That is a lot of movies, which, and very unlike the Marvel Universe, unlike Fast and the Furious, these are very detached, over a large period of time. Some of these things were not influenced at all by the others in terms of production staff, in terms of the companies that were actually making them, the individuals who were in charge of the creative teams for each of these films. So I guess I kind of wanted to kick this off by saying, because I was the guy who was such a stickler when we were talking about the Star Wars movies, that I really felt that, and I still feel that with the Star Wars movies, it doesn't work, that they feel so different, the 3 different iterations. Yeah, I'll fuck you again. Fuck that shit. The Star Trek movies for me, there are some, and certainly, especially the older ones, there are some that are not as good as the ones that are good. But the fact that the different generations are so different, that doesn't bother me at all for these. I think they work nicely in very different ways. I think they feel very different. The old ones definitely have that Star Trek thing that the old original series had, and some of the series from the 90s had, which is that the action is in the thinking. Like, they're on the bridge quite a lot talking to each other about how they're going to solve this problem. Whereas the new ones are character-driven action movies. They're character-driven action comedies. They have, and they both work for me. I don't really care that the older ones feel dramatically different than the new ones. The best of the old ones I enjoy in a very different way than the new ones. And I love that. I love that I have, out of this giant Star Trek universe of all these fucking series and movies that we have to choose from, it's fun that they don't all feel the exact same to me. I think that is one thing that I actually ended up taking away, which I know sounds like the exact opposite of what I was saying about Star Wars, but this is just one of those things where I don't know if I could explain it to you, but it works here, and it didn't work for me in Star Wars, and it works now. I don't know. What do you think, Dave? Do you agree with that?
I mean, yeah. Also there's a slightly different message in a lot of this stuff for you to take away. There's like environmental messages. There's the creation message. There's like every story deals with a different aspect of what man is striving for and what they're yearning for, and that's what Star Trek always did. It took social things and man's pursuits and all that sort of thing, and shone it up against a science fiction background. And I think that's why it works, because everything in every one of those movies, with the exception of a couple, has a little
for sure.
Has a little something of you in it. It's like it's something that you've thought about, or something that you're pondering yourself, or some social injustice that you've been exposed to. And I feel like that's why the series itself works. They sadly we can't get into what the series did, which was some of the biggest pioneering stuff in the history of television. But as far as the movies go, they are an extension of that.
I agree, dude. I like what you said. I want to spin off that for a second. I think my favorite aspect of sci-fi in general, I'm a huge sci-fi nerd, and whenever people pull this off correctly, it just works. It just lands. It's the point of the genre, and you just made it so beautifully. When you play by the rules correctly, according to this genre, it teaches you more by learning about the differences in the universe from you and them. You learn more about yourself. So going into this world of exploration, this universe of exploration, with this mission of peaceful, scientific, ethical understanding of how everything else works, that everything and everyone has a right to exist, automatically turns the mirror and makes them feel like they become more alive. Now, I was talking with my friend who watched 2 of these with me recently, leading up to this week, and we were talking about how different the series are. These recent trilogy, which I still will say that those are more character driven, and I still love those movies. But she was making the point that the old ones aren't as character driven, but I think you just brought it home for me. I was like, yeah, but why do I still feel so attached to them? It's because they realize that by playing by the rules correctly, you don't have to know every single detail and backstory of every single member of those the crew members, because every time that they go into another episodic story, whether it's in a movie or the series, but I know we're talking about the movies, it automatically makes you realize that the most important thing is that they have humanity. So it's almost like they're painting with a really wide brush there. And within that scope of humanity, you can always find yourself. And I think that's why Star Trek fans love this fucking world so much, is because there is room for all of us. We don't have to choose if we want to be the Jedi or the something specific. It doesn't matter in Star Trek. Everything has a right to exist, and everything will always feel like it exists even more at the end of each story, because of what they've learned about the others.
The good guys, the bad guys all share a trait of some societal flaw.
Yes, some ethical or moral flaw.
Yeah,
and it's usually mirrored. It's usually measured against human standards, but it's their thing that seems to be holding them back, and it almost always ties back in. They love throwing in the details of, we were like that 400 or 500 years ago. They always try to they'll give you throw in some anecdotal little detail about when we fought a war about that 400 years ago.
Do you mean we like the Vulcans, or we like Earthlings?
We like humans. Yeah, like Earthlings. Yeah. Earthlings. Good call. Not humans, Earthlings. So yeah, that's it for me, right. Big time. I don't feel, especially the old generation, Captain Kirk and the crew, you want to come back to that world over and over and over again. And I love I did want to make this point, in Beyond, the third one of this recent one, the third Chris Pine, J.J. Abrams movie that Justin Lin directed, by the way. It opens with a wonderful captain's log where they have been in their 5-year journey for 3 years. And Chris Pine's Captain Kirk is talking about how it's beginning to feel episodic, and it's beginning to feel mundane, and he can't tell the difference between one day or the next, that it's just the same actions of, there's something to do today with the mission. We do that. We go to sleep. We wake up. There's no personal growth. There's no mirror that is constantly pointing back to him. And I thought it was such a lovely callback to the reason why the original ones work so well, is that within that realm of episodic storytelling, there might not be tons and tons of character progression individually, but there is tons of room for the fans to feel like they are growing with the crew. So it's why you always want to come back.
As well, we just inspired something really cool. Everyone stuck at home in quarantine, start your own captain's log.
Oh shit, dude, that's good. That's good.
Start your own captain's log. We'll publish them all at the end of this when we all get set free again.
Oh my god,
that is wonderful.
Let me tell you about my Star Trek journey. So I actually would see the series on TV occasionally, and it always felt like people were having a conversation that I had no part of at all. Like I was so disconnected. I didn't know what Vulcans were. I didn't know who were the good guys, who were the bad guys, why everybody had different colors, why the costumes looked like that. I didn't get it at all because I never really tried. And also, I for some reason I was like, well, I'm a Star Wars guy, but I never gave the original Star Trek series or movies a chance. And then when JJ was directing the remake, and I was like, okay, cool, let's give it a shot. It was just a really good story. I mean, it's hard for me to wrap my head around if you like Star Wars, which pretty much almost anybody does, right? Because for some reason, fantasy and sci-fi, for just those phrases, kind of polarize people for whatever reason. But everybody likes Star Wars, and if you like Star Wars, don't say Star Trek is like, I don't understand how you can not like it at all, right? So if you just sit back and watch, it's a pretty good story, and there's pretty good storytelling, and the effects are awesome, and the idea, the possibility, for me, the thing that I attach to the most is just the idea of higher consciousness and in connecting differently. Like we can't even connect on right now on Earth to people from a different state or a different country, let alone a different planet. Like, how does this Federation go from planet to planet to talk to each other? I think that's actually way more interesting than it is, like, nerdy or passive or anything. And so I really, really liked this trilogy, this new series. So going back to the beginning, I was very curious. I will say I did not love the first one.
It's not one of the better ones. We'll all drink to that. That is not a very good movie.
Honestly, like I swear I watched it and I don't remember much about it.
How long did it take them to dock into the first spaceship?
No, this is what I said. This is what I said. Here we go. So this is the motion picture. This is 1979. So just so everybody can wrap their heads around this is 2 years after Star Wars, 1979, after the series had ended. I said, no, nice opening with the Klingons attacking something. It's good. You introduce the villains first. Guess who else does that? Star Wars. It's like, this is cool. I'm on board. The effects aren't as good, but they probably killed at the time. I believe they won Oscars. I'm sorry. It literally looks like a laser light show, but they're in space. And I was like, it didn't age well. And then they do a 20-minute opening of when you see the Enterprise. Like the Enterprise, and it shows it from every angle. It literally, honestly, I can't believe they weren't documenting it with a voice like the way they would the International Space Station.
Jeff, I can tell you that is the biggest flaw of the movie series, in that build up to the reveal of that ship was for the Trekkies.
Yeah.
It wasn't for anyone coming in cold.
Yeah.
That was for the people who are like, they're putting the Enterprise on a cinema screen. So they built to it and they built to it. And they did that build because they knew those guys would be right on the edge of their seat, almost falling in the row, spilling their popcorn, waiting for this fucking ship to come around the corner.
The film looked great. The special effects, you're right, but the actual filming, like the color, that first movie might be the best looking of all of the old generation movies.
It had a good poster. I'm sure a lot of people saw it on acid and loved it.
If there was ever a generalized criticism, it's that a lot of the films do rely on the series to get you there.
So anyway, fine, we get on with it. Kirk is back, etc., etc. And then they go into a cloud, which is not a black hole, but it has similar qualities where you can't transmit radio in and out. They have to go into this uncharted territory that the Federation probably wouldn't let them go in. There's probably Klingons. Slowly. I can't tell you how long they went through this cloud. Honestly, think about it like they're going through like a vortex, right? So it's like you're in space.
What was that? You think it was a miniature?
Everything is swirling around them, and I'm like, you think you see something at the end. I'm like, oh, there it is. And then they keep cutting back to the bridge. And then they cut to what they're looking at and the bridge.
You're talking about when they're inside the cloud,
I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? When they're in the cloud.
When they're like actually near the alien?
I forgot we were in a cloud. It was so long.
That's original series editing 101.
Yeah. Take your time. When in doubt, take your time.
45 minutes.
Cut to the enemy outside. Cut back to Captain Kirk with some music that may or may not have been from this episode. The person composed it may not have watched what was going on.
But I like the world building. I like the way they were bringing all these characters together. But God, the story I couldn't get it on board. Whereas the next movie is The Wrath of Khan, which is 2. You would recommend that I see that. Yeah. And Also, because if you look at the newer trilogy, the Khan movie is the second one, which is Star Trek
Into Darkness.
Into Darkness.
In Darkness, yeah.
And Benedict Cumberbatch, like everybody knew he was. I didn't even know who Khan was, and everybody was like, "It's Khan. He's Khan. You can't tell. It's a mysterious character." They're like, "Yeah, Khan," which is also the second movie of this trilogy. It's the second movie originally, and they sort of dim down a lot of the space travel effects, a lot of the like outside the spacecraft effects, and it becomes this story mostly taking place between the two spaceships, and then this one, is it a space station where they're working on Genesis?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think they're building it.
It's a planet.
But this movie, so Genesis, obviously, like the Bible, it's basically like the creation of life, and they're trying to cultivate to see if they can create life from scratch. Since we obviously, as whatever species, can blow up planets, can we build life from scratch? And it was an underground project that even most people in the Federation didn't know, including Kirk. And it is such a good idea because Khan just wants to destroy everything. He's kind of like a Joker figure of Batman. Like he's taking revenge specifically on Kirk, but it does seem like he's out for blood everywhere. He's also a super creature that was basically created to be of higher consciousness and a superior being, which I think Benedict probably does better. But in the original movie, he's just like an awesome human villain. And the idea of creation versus destruction and where life begins, where it ends, and again, higher consciousness. What does it mean to be superior to one another, to each other? I think it was so interesting. The movie was really, really gripping. It was
and
really,
number
really compelling.
Number two, Khan, I think, is their first time. You feel it a little bit in number one, but I think number two is the first time where they really settle into, like, it feels this way a lot in the original series. Not even, maybe even more so beginning with number two with Khan. It starts to really feel like Shakespearean theater. Like it is dialogue driven, ham furniture, prop chewing storytelling, dude.
And then they're like, let's go the whole hog Shakespearean and get Picard.
Yeah,
Picard. Yeah, exactly. but so the third, whatever. Spock dies at the end of 2, and then of course he comes back because they made 13 of these movies, and how the fuck can they make 11 more without their second best character? Probably their best character.
I would say best character.
I'm gonna jump to 6. Also in Khan, and then in 6. 6 is called The Undiscovered Country.
For the love of God, skip 5.
Yeah. So 6, which you also pushed me towards, The Undiscovered Country. Obviously, it's a Hamlet quote. It's
wonderful,
the to be or not to be
space. Such a good one.
And so who do they get to be the villain in the Shakespeare movie? It's
Mr.
Christopher
Von
Plummer,
Trapp, dude. Fucking Von Trapp.
By the way, his final when he goes to be or not to, it's like
that whole ending
sequence. His death line
that ending sequence when they're cutting back and forth between him firing torpedoes.
Right.
Every single time they cut back to him, he's quoting Shakespeare. It's another Shakespeare line.
It is so good. So anyway, we didn't mean to be too plotty about these, but between 2 and 6 especially, because 6, to be or not to be, basically is obviously do you live or you die. The reason we are alive is because we're afraid of what happens after death, which is the undiscovered country, right? After death is the undiscovered country. We're so afraid of that we'd rather suffer on Earth now than venture to the beyonds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So 2 and 6 really bring up existentialism and that whole existential crisis we have of, does it matter? What if does destiny matter at all? Are we important or are we not? The universe is going to go on without us. So do we really need to put so much effort or pressure on this? Does legacy matter? All of these questions that they ask in these 2 movies are done in really, really deeply involved plots that are interesting. Also, the Klingons are the villains in Star Trek, for those of you who don't know much about Star Trek. And the Klingon, basically in 1, it opens with the Klingons in one film. In 6, it basically becomes a peace treaty between the Klingons and human, I guess, Earthlings and the Federation. And that obviously goes awry. But it's basically like mortal enemies trying to come together at peace. And it brings up all these questions that I'm sure are very relevant to everybody now.
It's like the guy who hates them the most ends up having to argue for the peace treaty.
Yeah.
That's really cool too. Yeah. And trying to save the life of the ambassador, the president of the Klingons. Is that
the president?
Yes.
Well, the chancellor of the Klingons, and they eventually save the president of the United Federation of Planets.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, these are big questions. These are gigantic questions that like sci-fi does so well, and sci-fi doesn't have to be scary for it to work. You're right. The effects aren't super great in these movies. We all know that. It's mostly about them standing around and delivering dialogue to each other. The action's not crazy until you get to this recent reboot. But all the questions are there. And again, not just visually and literally, is this a very inclusive tale? Like lots of different looking actors and sounding actors have been on these movies and these series for a long time. Drink that beer.
Fuck.
Shotgunning that? What?
Yeah, what the hell just happened?
Let's talk about this. I want to know what you guys think about this. Again, it's hard not to think about Star Wars when you think about Star Trek and just the foils, the differences between the two. One, I think Star Trek is more straight sci-fi, and Star Wars is more fantasy. We have to mention that J.J. Abrams fucking rebooted both of these. Like we have to point that out. So why does Star Trek work so much better for me? His Star Treks are way better for me than his Star Wars reboots. Like they're not even in the same world. And I think it goes back to that argument I was making about how he was still pulling on the sentiment and nostalgia from the original Star Wars, but trying to do something new that didn't quite work, as opposed to just going straight back to the original story of Star Trek and asking the same questions, because those questions are inexhaustible. There's no way we'll ever answer them. Is it that, or is it
that you don't like black and white in your bad guys and good guys? Because Star Wars is straight down the line. These are your bad guys. These are your good guys. Whereas Star Trek is definite shades of grey. Like the good guys sometimes fuck up. And Khan, at some point you start rooting for Khan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this guy has been wronged.
That close up where he sheds the tear. Benedict Cumberbatch, remember? Yeah. I mean, but you're totally right. And maybe that is one reason why it just doesn't lend itself as well, because of the fantasy versus the sci-fi. Sci-fi can't have those kinds of black and whites. It's the existentialism can't be asked in black and white. There's too much relativity. So you're right. Maybe it really is just that. Maybe it just frustrates me that the rules of fantasy didn't work well for him.
I mean, Star Wars even acknowledged its own rules. It's like there's an Obi-Wan quote: "Only evil deals in absolutes."
Mm. Yeah. So it contradicts itself.
Yes. Or it points out its flaw. One of the two.
Yeah. Star Wars is the Bible of sci-fi. I don't know. You're totally right. Thank you for calling me out on that. I've actually, before we did this, for no reason having to do with this podcast at all, my roommate and I have referenced him before in The Lord of the Rings. Al!
Shout out to Al.
He's been a Star Trek fan his whole life.
I nearly pulled Al as in a ringer. I was nearly going to pull Al in as a ringer.
I know. I kind of wanted him to come in on this episode.
I wish I could have, but we're so far away though.
Anyway, we miss you, Al. He definitely showed me these years ago, and I was getting more into him with him. And, he gently had to
watched the series with them. The new series.
He had to kind of bring me in, because I'm like you, Jeff. I didn't really watch these growing up, and I always felt like, why? I don't get it. The production value is bad. I don't get it. So anyway, recently I've been rewatching some of the old series, and I've been crushing the Next Generation series. And you're totally right, Dave. It's the fact that none of this lives in not virtuosic, worlds of virtues. Of the efficacy is too malleable. And that's what makes it so interesting. Is because it's always going to be a thought experiment. It's never going to come down to good versus evil, bad guy versus good guy. Every bad guy in every one of these movies, or bad woman or bad girl, Kim Cattrall in The Undiscovered Country, everyone has a point. Everyone, here we go, I'm going to bring it back to Star Trek, the whole reason. Every one of them has a right to exist according to the Prime Directive. So how do you go about solving the dilemma over who gets to live in a certain way? And they keep running up against it over and over and over again, and that question is just inexhaustible. I could watch it forever.
This is where I'll kick in, because I started with Next Generation and went back to the original. So, I mean, I saw Star Trek in the theaters, and I was a kid. I thought it was great, and then I saw Wrath of Khan, and it scared the shit out of me because those fucking earworm things. Like, I didn't know what the thing in my ear. Yeah, it scared the hell out of me.
And the Khan yell, God!
That was the only. That's been
Let's all do
so
it.
many times.
Let's all do it.
Yeah.
God! God, it's so good.
Anyway, I look forward to removing those clips.
No.
But yeah, it was Next Generation was where I kicked in with the series, and then when they announced that they were doing a 7th movie after it was like number 6, I actually went to a marathon in the cinema, and they started at 6 o'clock in the morning. You sat through Star Trek 1, Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, Star Trek 4. Everyone slept through Star Trek 5. And then we went on to Star Trek 6. And it was to celebrate the script being locked for Generations. And Generations takes what we were saying earlier and with the existentialism and basically goes, what if you were given everything you ever wanted ever? How hard would you fight to get back to that? Or how hard would you fight to keep it?
Yep.
I don't know. Let's ask Donald Trump. I'm sorry, what?
That's for the T word. But then, like, they moved on to which was my this is quite a controversial opinion, but number 8, First Contact, is my favorite movie of the series.
Dude, I watched that one like 3 weeks ago by coincidence before we made this list. I loved it. I loved it.
That was the next one I was going to watch.
It was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who was Commander Riker.
Yep.
And it was a masterstroke getting him to direct this film because it comes out so beautifully. You like, granted, it does like all of them. It lends itself to the series. It takes it a little bit from the series.
It's the first. It's the first movie
to set up the premise.
It's the first movie with the new generation, isn't it?
No, Generations was the first one with the Next Generation.
I thought that was crossed. I thought First Contact was the first one.
It was a crossover,
only,
yeah. But that was the handover film.
First
but it was
Contact
mostly
is straight up Next Generation.
Yeah. And First Contact features the Borg, which was, in my opinion, the best villain ever introduced ever in the history of Star Trek, because these guys are merciless. They just turn up and go, "You're mine now," and take your shit and assimilate you, and you're part of their collective. But again, as with all Star Trek villains, they're just doing what they do.
Right.
They're striving for perfection, and they're striving for perfection by taking your distinctiveness and adding it to their own.
Mm-hmm.
They even say it in their intro.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have a rider when they turn up. It's like, we're the Borg. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Then that sets up, in my opinion, the perfect movie because Picard is flawed from the beginning. He's the leader.
Patrick Stewart. Everybody,
yes.
Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, he is flawed because he's been abducted by these guys and made into a Borg, so he can hear what they think. Well, he has
an emotional response to it, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he's got PTSD from this shit.
Yeah.
So he's not doing so good. And they end up back in time, and it sets up some of the best comedy ever because it's a complete never meet your heroes moment, because in the entire history of the series, we finally get to meet Zefram Cochrane, who is the guy who created the first warp drive, and this guy is a fucking drunk and a loser.
Mm-hmm.
And it's James Cromwell.
James Cromwell. In my opinion, one of his best roles ever, and he does not want the fame that they kind of let slip that he has. He wants none of it. They even managed to slip Magic Carpet Ride in this movie as a song. It's got androids striving, like fighting their want for emotion and then being given exactly what they want, and then, do I really want that? Because this is kind of going too far. It's like everything in this movie is flawless. It's got action. It's got emotion. There's cameos galore in this film. If you're a throwback to the series, it, in my opinion, is the perfect action sci-fi film.
And I think it's a perfect example of what it's such an essential Star Trek film because it makes you. That premise creates the dilemma where you think it might slip into a different kind of Star Trek movie because Picard has so much of an emotional response to these people. Is he going to defeat them simply because he is convinced they are evil? And it rises above it. It finally lands when it finally gets to that last conversation between him and her, Borg. It finally, when he overcomes his fear, does he actually arrive at a Star Trek conversation. And he finally gets to have a Star Trek conversation with her, and only together can they reason with the fact that they will not be able to coexist. You know what I mean? Like God, it's just so essential. It's not. I love these two
also,
because
I should point out as well, Christopher Lloyd was in both these franchises.
Yes, he was.
Where was Lloyd?
I mean, Christopher Lloyd was Kang. No, not Kang. He's the Klingon in Khan.
Yeah.
Klingon Khan?
Yeah. I forgot about that.
It's a very memorable role.
So what do you think about this? Like, how do we talk about the fact that it's just another good example that you can have. Everyone can do these things differently, and there might not be any method. I mean, there might not be any reason why something works and something doesn't work that is discernible enough to have a conversation about it. We had the almost opposite conversation about Lord of the Rings. It's why fantasy works so well when it's done so well, is that it does rely on virtue, ethics, morality, or excuse me, virtue and morality, not ethics, not complex relative ethics. It doesn't have anything to do with the existentialism. The orcs are supposed to die. It doesn't matter if they had a wife and kids. Those fuckers are supposed to fucking die. Stormtroopers are supposed to fucking die. But every time they get into fights with Klingons, especially since half of this entire franchise is separated with a peace treaty, where half of the franchise, they are in peace, and the other half, they are not. You can't come across somebody new in Star Trek and not immediately start thinking like the Star Trek crew. You do not think about get your phasers and put them on kill. You immediately are curious about how are they possibly going to be included in the Federation of Planets. I don't know. It's just, what do you guys think? Do you think which one do you think? Through
your experience, it instills a set of values in you. Yeah.
Is that why? And don't you think that is why Star Trek? And I know we're not talking about the original series, but Star Trek in general had so much impact on the technology and engineering of future technology in our real world.
I mean, I still stand by the Next Generation called the invention of iPads.
Yep. They told their tablets that they took everywhere. They absolutely did.
Yeah.
The Bluetooth, they use fucking wireless and Bluetooth comm like all the time.
Yeah. Because everything's better with Bluetooth.
Mm-hmm. But specifically that like you can't start moving forward into space age exploration and thinking about technology. I know everyone already knows this, but you couldn't be thinking about going to the moon and having an international space station if you weren't in the same mindset that Star Trek represents. It's not good versus evil. It's that there is no future if we don't work together. Unlike Star Wars, which is there is no future if one of us exists.
It is a vision of society in the future where mankind has overcome their differences and they all work together to go out into the stars and explore. And it's a vision
to boldly go out
humanity
where no man has gone before.
Where no one has gone before.
No one has gone before.
Also, where intelligence rules.
Intelligence, science, and
it has a nerdy connotation because I don't think that the jocks like Biff are going to be the ones engineering the Enterprise in 300.
I know, you're right. Al said it best. I'm going to quote Al, and then I'll promise I'll shut up. I talk too much. Al said, "It's a universe where scientists are the heroes."
Yeah, exactly. Just like 2020 during the COVID outbreak.
Like right now, yeah.
Like right fucking now. I know one of our friends texted me the other day, Jeff, one of our mutual friends, and she was like, who knows, maybe we'll come out of this where truth and reason and science will prevail. I was like, Star Trek! That's all I texted her back.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yeah, okay, we've gushed enough.
I trekked out real hard. I loved it.
Yeah,
I trekked out more than I thought.
Now comes the hard part.
Yeah, Jeff, I am curious real fast before we end this. You were not a huge Trek fan in anything other than these reboots. Did you have a good time watching these older movies?
Not the first one, but 2 and 6 I definitely did.
Okay, cool. On that note, when we come back, we are going to be deliberating. One of these will be moving forward. It's either going to be the Star Trek franchise or a fan favorite, Back to the Motherfucking Future. We'll be right back.
And we're back!
We're back, bitches. This is it. This is the final segment where we will be deliberating. You heard right. Okay, we're all very nervous. We all had a little bit of anxiety leading up to this. I think Dave and I maybe more than Jeff.
There's going to be some hate mail.
Yeah, we're gonna get trashed. We're gonna let Jeff go first because he seems to be the least anxious. I have a feeling. Let me hear it.
I'm going to go first. And I'm not going to lie to you. I never was the kind of person who thought, like, oh, I love all 3 Back to the Futures. Back to the Future 1, 2, 3. I love 2. I love 3. For me, it was like 1 and the other 2. But this week, especially watching all 3 in a row, there's no question for me. It is Back to the Future. Now, I do, of course, as I said earlier in the podcast, I do have an affinity for Star Trek and everything that it represents and everything that it... everything that when it does right is fantastic, but there are some things about it that are nerdy for me, and I've seen Game of Thrones 10 times all the way through. Not season 7 and 8, of course. Buzz.
God damn it!
I'm not going to buzz you for
Nazis
7
and Parkinson's, dude. Come on, what is wrong with you?
I did not make a Parkinson's joke.
Pure
Get the fuck
evil.
off my back. It was not
Pure
a Parkinson's
evil.
joke. It was an accent joke. Anyway,
Oh,
there are. I chose intentionally, thanks to you guys, the finer Star Treks to go back and watch. But there are, especially one, man. There are some things about the series that just don't hang up. They just don't care. They just don't care. Yeah.
Anything else, Dave? How do you say the opposite of "live long and prosper"? Is there a Vulcan translation?
I think it's "fuck you and die."
Fuck off and die, motherfucker! Yeah, you turn it upside down. You turn the V upside down, and you tell them to go fuck themselves.
No, it's something about ramming your cross in their face at the same time.
Anything else I want to hear? What else? Were there any other reasons why you decided to go that way? Did it surprise? I'm curious about how it surprised you. I want to hear you talk a little bit more about that, about how you were surprised at how much you enjoyed the Back to the Futures. Was that, I'm curious, just for context for the listeners, did you watch the Star Treks first and then you watched the Back to the Futures?
I actually was watching them at the same time, more or less, because I knew that the house I was in would probably want to watch Back to the Future more.
Right.
So Back to the Future was more of my evening movie watching, whereas during the day, this is quarantine, so I, believe it or not, had patches of day to watch movies, was my Star Trek time for the most part. So if that is my influence, you Trekkies out there, fine. But I like the Star Treks that I saw, especially 2 and 6, and 8 was going to be my next one, which I also would have enjoyed. But ultimately,
missed 8?
The world was. I really did. God damn it! There's some really good plot work. Ultimately, the world itself, I don't always want to live in. So anyway, Back to the Future just did a better nostalgia trip on me, and that's that.
Nice, cool. Well, that's that. He knew his fucking answer, Dave. How are you feeling, dude? Are you even feeling anxious like me leading up to this?
I agonized over this shit for about 5 hours, and it's really funny because I have the infamous scores.
Yes.
With the X's.
He raised his axes down.
Yeah, Star Trek came in with a 25.
Wait, 25. Is this even fair? Hold on, wait a second. There's 13 Star Treks. I would hope it has more X's, because that's 2 per movie. That's bad.
And Back to the Future. Came in with a 26.
All right, so Back to the Future.
I'm going against this because Back to the Future are 3 movies that I've seen multiple times, many, many times, and I own them on a Blu-ray that's somewhere back in Australia, and I can't bring it here because of different regions. Fuck you, copyright. And but Star Trek, like, if I'm going to sit down and this was the thing that sold it for me. If I'm going to go, I want to watch a movie and I have a choice of watching any of the Back to the Future movies or Star Trek, I'm putting on First Contact. And I'm watching First Contact.
Back to the Future 1?
No. Star Trek, in my opinion, is and now don't get me wrong, because the idea of this podcast is to tell people to watch these things while they're stuck in quarantine. Now I'm going to tell you, this comes with some caveats, because when you get to the Star Treks, if you decide to watch them, you can skip number 5.
Skip number 5. Yeah, skip number 5. For anyone who's wondering, that is 10. The final frontier. Skip the final frontier and skip...
number 5 is directed...
Nemesis is pretty rough. Number 10, yeah, that is a pretty bad one.
Nemesis sucks ass.
That one came out when we were in high school, Jeff. You didn't see that in the theater, Nemesis? That one came out when we were what year was that? That was 2002?
Now, okay, let me just clarify this. Like Star Trek V, Final Frontier, they come across Spock's until now non-mentioned brother, who decides.
Oh, that just slipped everybody's mind.
Yeah, we kind of forgot he was there, and then suddenly, I got served with a warrant and found out that there's a son, and and he decides to go to the center of the universe and search for God. And
he's in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. He didn't see Guardians of the Galaxy 2. He would have found God.
You didn't see Kurt Russell?
And,
you didn't see him?
I created Earth. Like, wait, you're God? He's like, yeah. It's like, that was simple. That was easy.
This movie is so bad. They get Uhura to do a fan dance to distract everyone. It's like, why was that necessary?
Yeah, Uhura. God, I love her, dude.
But you're advancing this trilogy.
Wait. I'm advancing this trilogy based on 11 movies.
He's bitter about it. He's bitter about it, but he's doing it.
I need to get this out of my system because, for fuck's sake, what the fuck were you doing putting William Shatner in charge of directing a movie? Because he directed.
They wanted to see what would happen. Don't you kind of want to see what would happen?
Okay, now let me get this. Okay, that pales in comparison to Star Trek Nemesis. Like, for God's sake, stop at 9. Okay.
Insurrection.
Do not load up Star Trek Nemesis. It's so bad and out of character, it ended the entire franchise. This movie could have been 80 minutes long. It's 2 hours.
It is really bad.
Jesus. Okay. And I must admit, like, I also wasn't a fan, really, of the third alternate reality, the new Star Trek series, Justin Lin's one, because every time they introduce off-road vehicles into these things, it sucks.
Off-road vehicles? But none fell out of planes and landed on the planet.
All right, so...
Fast and the Furious joke.
Yeah.
But Star Trek 10, just as a caveat, before I put this through, because I'll go into those reasons in a second, but Star Trek 10 was so bad. It took
God.
Tom...
Why do you say this during the start?
Okay, yeah, cool.
Go ahead. No, finish. It took Tom. Go ahead.
I had to drink the beer. The buzzer went off. I follow the rules, Jeff. It took Tom Hardy's career
way too strong.
6 years to recover from being the villain in Nemesis. He thought it was going to be his big breakout role. It took him 6 years to get another decent role. And it effectively ended Stuart Baird's directing career. The man did not direct a thing after this, although he did go on to edit Skyfall. But he did recuts on... this is a great bit of trivia. Did recuts on Lara Croft Tomb Raider for Paramount in order to get the directing job on Star Trek Nemesis, but he also did recuts on Mission Impossible 2, which is the worst entry in the Mission Impossible franchise, so really should have given you a fucking clue as to what was going to happen.
God, that is definitely the worst Mission Impossible franchise.
So Dave's never heard of Second Chances.
In long story short, Star Trek is a franchise that goes right back to my youth. I have a soft spot for all of these films. They are very, very well made, yeah. Except for those two. And, it was a tough call to put it up again. I swear to God, for about 4 hours this afternoon, I was leaning towards Back to the Future and putting Back to the Future through. But from my own personal perspective, Star Trek has been a massive influence in my life, and I cannot, in good conscience, ignore that and put through 3 films that are fun to watch, but really are just 3 films that are fun to watch.
All right.
So we're 1-1. I had a feeling this was going to happen, and this is why I asked to go last. Now I'm even more conflicted, though, because I thought you both were going to vote for Back to the Future, and I was going to be very nervous because I, too, Dave, I was sitting here, I've been very nervous this whole week thinking about this.
Don't tell me you're going to advance Star Trek.
I just drank the entirety of a 9.1% beer just bagging out some films.
Yeah, you know what? Let me just. I'm just opening another one really quickly, just because. All right, so, God, Back to the Future is awesome. There's just no way around it, right?
Back to the Future. I bagged out 2 films from my own franchise.
Yeah.
Instead of those films, because when as I said, I have 2 categories when I do this. And I have basically I do the X's, which no one seems to understand. I get a lot of mockery for.
Whenever he likes something, he makes an X.
And then I have a good section, a bad section. As well. And in the bad section of Back to the Future, there is only one thing. There's only one note for me. So,
and I think I know what you mean. Yeah, it is a tough call, and I feel the same way. And honestly, leading up to this conversation, I wasn't decided at all. I knew I needed to hear both of you guys come at me. I wanted to hear.
Did I convince you? I was really going for it.
I mean, so honestly, I wanted to hear what you guys are talking about, and I know it's obvious, but this reminds me of our Star Wars conversation. We bagged on Star Trek quite a bit. Back to the Future. I agree with you, Jeff. It surprised me how much, as time goes by, how much I enjoy each of them. Because when I was young, I did not enjoy 2 and 3 nearly as much as number 1.
Same.
I definitely liked, as I got older, I appreciated 2 more and more and more because it's a little bit more of a head trip. It's a little bit more complicated. 3 is a lot of sentiment. And I struggle with sentimentality. I don't know. It makes me nervous. It feels like they're starting to lean on the crutch of sentimentality a little bit. It's still extremely enjoyable. I still stand by what I said in the first section. There's a lot of enough character development that you care enough about these people that you don't mind that it's sentimental. But I'm going to quote one of my good friends and podcast co-hosts. Star Trek just matters more.
Oh, get the fuck out of here.
Matters
that's for Jeff. That one's for Jeff.
I don't know
that's
if
for
it does
you, Jeff.
matter more.
Fuck you, Jeff. That's for you, motherfucker.
I don't think it matters more at all. There's no way if they showed Star Trek, the motion picture on the lawn in fucking Bryant Park, that thousands of people would show up and be like,
"Fuck yeah,
no.
I'm going to use your exact argument against you because you were right with Star Wars and you're right with this as well. Back to the Future is tighter. There's less movies, of course. So it's hard to compare the franchises. I know that is a flaw in this week's comparison and whether or not we like it. But there is a reason why Star Trek and Star Wars have prevailed for decades and decades and decades. And it's because of the cultural impact they have had on everyone. It's because of the universe they create. It's because of the fact that when we were talking about in the second segment of this podcast, when we were talking about the movies, we kept spinning back and just talking about what the universe and what the show, the movies, and everything about Star Trek did culturally and did for sci-fi, for the genre of sci-fi.
Yeah, but it's not just the movies, though. The series did a lot of that work for them. They took the best parts of the series and put them into the movie.
It's true. I'm not proud of this decision. This is a really hard decision.
In defense of both of you, until we were mid-podcast, I was leaning towards Back to the Future. I talked myself into Star Trek.
Yeah.
I overrode my own scoring system.
I mean, I think I'm gonna go for Star Trek only because mostly also because the context of this conversation, which is kind of the thing I was trying to yell at you guys about with Star Wars. We are not just for all the listeners, we're not just saying what are literally the best individual movies, no matter how many of them there are. We're talking about a Corona franchise. We're talking about being stuck at home. In what worlds do you want to live in for a long period of time?
I think more people would choose Back to the Future personally, but for our podcast,
I'm talking about what I like.
I think Star Trek. Yeah. I think watching these Star Trek movies. How annoying it is that. Hold on. I think watching these Star Trek movies could finally open the door for a lot of people to the Star Trek universe and cross over the precipice that you were talking about earlier, Jeff. I also used to be one of those people who just did not get the Star Trek world, and I felt excluded. I didn't understand it. And now that I'm a part of both the Star Wars and the Star Trek world, it's increased all of the things that you think.
Congratulations! I'm glad you got your certification.
Jeff is better. We need a bitter alarm.
I think,
guys, no, because now this is going to move on, and I've only seen 6 out of the 13 of these fucking movies, and now I have to talk about them all over again.
Yeah, watch 8 and 10.
Fuck it. I'm watching 5. I'm only watching 5 and 10. I think all I'm gonna watch.
We should just go balls deep, and we should put fucking Star Trek against Star Wars. We should just fucking do it. We should be the ones who actually have that conversation.
Dude, no, the internet cannot take that.
Yeah, we should just do it.
No, because we have to reseed everything because of Dave's fucking debacle last week.
We'd have to have a fucking 50 person Zoom chat to do that.
Dave's fucking Dave's fucking X test created a virtual tie.
We should invite. We should invite,
have...
dude. We should do that, and we should invite the internet to Star Wars versus Star Trek. We should let everyone come in on a Zoom conversation. They can't hear us. They can't hear the podcast, or they can hear the podcast. We can't hear them. They can just type at us.
Wait, no. People are just going to go on Zoom just to moon us and streak us, like all those
I mean, that's also fun.
No, I don't want to see anybody on Zoom.
I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I love Back to the Future so much.
How did Back to the Future lose? You guys are fucking insane.
It's not like it lost to. It's not like it lost to Die Hard, dude. It lost to something like Star Wars. There's something about Star Trek that matters more. It lost to
something that has such a bigger IP. That would be like losing to the SpongeBob movie because SpongeBob matters more. And it's like, well, does it matter more because of this?
Let me ask you this.
We're not judging for the world. We're judging on what we personally like.
And we're just judging right now under these circumstances.
Enjoy Star Trek. I've enjoyed them for many, many, many years, and I've seen these films so many times. Like, I can tell you what happens in any one of these films.
Here's the difference.
Not Star Trek 9. Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah.
Here's the difference. Here's the difference. And I think you would agree with it because Star Wars is similar, but I think Star Trek is even more so. My feelings about Back to the Future exist exclusively when I'm watching Back to the Future. My feelings about Star Trek and the way they make me feel about existential questions, the sci-fi genre, different styles of storytelling. I think it goes beyond individual movies. It has bled into your life.
I heard your rant when Dave tried to talk and you had a 10-minute rant about how great Star Trek is. No, I get it. All right. Star Trek is going on.
Just for the record, Jeff Ostermuller hates Star Trek.
Jeff just hates it when we agree.
Look, just because Joel Cohen wrote the entire Star Trek series.
Absolutely nothing. I do want to say I am very sorry about this. I love
That's still for Joel
Back to the Future.
Nobody cares. They're already sticking the middle fingers up to all of you.
That's okay. That's okay. I can't. Yeah. So that's the deal. That's what's happening. It's 2-1. Star Trek has crushed, stamped, trampled on Jeff's Back to the Future vote. Jeff, go fuck yourself. Right. Back to the Future isn't standing a chance. You can go back to 1950 and date your mom all you want. I'm not going back and doing it.
Jeff, you can take confidence in the fact that we were both on the fence when this started. We both talked ourselves into Star Trek.
To be fair, I don't really care about Back to the Future that much anyway. I just really don't want to have to watch all these Star Trek movies. Also, it was supposed to go up against Toy Story or John Wick, and now I don't even know what to do anymore. Like,
I'm telling you, guys, let's make it happen. Star Wars versus Star Trek. That would be ridiculous.
I've ruined Jeff.
Well, all right, everybody, this has been a really interesting episode
with a lot of abuse.
I'm feeling quite tipsy. Jeff, what are we going to be doing next week, dude? That was a rough episode. Guys, I'm still reeling. I'm tingling.
I am fucking excited about next week.
Oh, shit.
Next week is the one when we were doing the seeding for these. Ridiculous. And when we decided we were going to reseed, we were like, let's make sure these seeds are right. And we're like, maybe actually it'll work out better if they're random. They're up against random movies. So the Harry Potter movies were obviously going to be on it, and we were like, is it a 6? I don't know. Is it? Some people think it's better, some people maybe lower. And then we realized that Harry Potter was up against Die Hard, and just the idea of comparing Harry Potter to Die Hard, literally we said, okay, we're keeping this seating as it is. So that's right. With
John
8
McClane
Harry Potter films
versus Harry Potter.
John McClane.
Motherfucking McClane. That's right, bitch.
Versus however many they've made of Die Hard.
Oh my God, it's so good. What are there, 5?
I've seen With a Vengeance at least 15 times.
I mean, dude, it's going to be a tough one next week, you guys. I love
the same. I've seen
the Die Hard movies, dude. Once again, I'm going to be anxious all week because I fucking love both of these series. I don't even want to have to choose, dude, for completely different reasons. One is with my heart, the other is with my nether regions. And I don't really know which one.
All right. You'll hear more about it next week. Jeff, John, and Dave saying peace out.
Live long and prosper, motherfuckers. Star Trek.
Oh my God. He's seen the movie, so now he's a Vulcan. Great.